So I guess it's a, again, I am a firm believer that it's kind of dependent on the person, so there is not like a one size fits all with anything in terms of, you know, whether it's reasonable adjustments or that kind of thing. So we take the view at NCC, it's if there's something we can be doing that will help you be your brilliant best, whether you are neurodiverse and have a diagnosis or you don't, for the reason we were talking about before. Some people don't want to have a label, thanks very much. Or, you know, with whatever the circumstances are, if there's something we can be doing to set you up well or better, we want to be doing that anyway. So it's, you know, people will often have that assumption coming to, you know, me or one of my colleagues in HR, do I need to get a diagnosis before you can, you know, make an adaptation for me or change my working hours because I prefer to work, you know, through the night instead of in the day? And it's like, well, no, if that's, you know, if we can figure it out, we can make it work, of course, that's what we want to do. So the types of things that we tend to see, so if you think about, you know, candidates coming through a recruitment process, for instance, we encourage people to let us know if there's anything that would be helpful. Some people don't feel comfortable doing that, they don't know us well enough to do that yet, so, you know, we've got work to do there to, I think, probably talk more openly externally about it's okay to tell us this stuff we're asking because we want to help. So people in the past have asked us, you know, things like, can I have the interview questions in advance so that I can take time to reflect on them? Because if you ask me on the spot, I'm not gonna give the best considered answer. And fine, okay, if that's helpful. Or, you know, if someone says, you know, it's with my neurodiversity, there's no way I'm gonna give you, you know, good answers on a psychometric test. So we'll say, okay, that's fine. We know what we want to get out of that assessment, so we'll find another way to do it that isn't putting anyone at a disadvantage, you know, and in fact we don't do much of them anymore for that reason, really. And then people come in, you know, into the business. It's, you know, as I say, we've got a whole suite of management training happening over the summer, which heavily focuses on neurodiversity and you know, other just how to be a good manager, really the same things that you you could apply to anyone, and it would make their working environment a better place to be. So asking what sound like really basic questions, like how do you like to be communicated to? Do you like written instruction or verbal instruction? Is it, you know, it's or do you like to reflect on things before, or shall I just ring you up and tell you on the spot type of thing? Or things like, you know, we mentioned deadlines before. Are they helpful or unhelpful? You know, depending on the circumstances. So I think it's for me, it's knowing the person and knowing what would set them up for success. So it's you know, we're focusing much more now on that kind of, as I said before, that kind of the holistic colleague. You know, there's so much more to a person than the version of themselves that they present at work. So it's, you know, how do we make that extends to everything? So like, how can we be more flexible in our approaches? You know, the hybrid working and all that sort of stuff. And you know, just it feels like COVID ironically has kind of helped us with a lot of that, because like, well, we've kind of proven we can work flexibly and from anywhere. So, you know, why would we change any of that now? So it applies to, you know, you mentioned other protected characteristics before, Mel, but I guess it's even people with like care and responsibilities, or, you know, childcare, school runs, all that sort of stuff. It's like, you know, how do we just, I guess, not assume that everyone's going to fit into the corporate 9 to 5, this is how we do things. It's, you know, we're all individual, we all, you know, that's just a ridiculous concept, isn't it? You know, so making the world of work a bit more personal and a bit more tuned into, you know, how to, you know, set people up well and get the best out of their talents, I guess. Yeah, and in a way that they feel rewarded for it and not taking the piss out of, I think, not taking advantage of. Yeah, so that's my view.
Yeah, what she said. So you've covered that off, so I'm just going to cover the biggest pain for the young people that we work with is getting a job in the first place. It's the advertising, application, recruitment, interview, onboarding process. When was the last time you saw a job advert that encouraged neurodiverse people to apply for this job? I can't remember ever seeing one. We were talking to GCHQ. Ah, well there you go. There you go. I'm often wrong and I'm wrong with that. We were talking to a big bank that's connected to this whole operation and a senior person in their tech. And we were having this conversation with their HR department and how they could encourage more of our graduates to go into them. And the tech guy rummaged around in his desk and went, that's the biggest barrier that we've got to employ more neurodiverse people. And it was the 30-page questionnaire that everybody that worked for that bank had to fill in before they got through the door. So how many people is that going to put off? Interviews. Interviews. I mean, God, I think I've had like 2 interviews in my life because they scare the life out of me. They put the fear of God into some of the young people that we work with. And we spend about a year softly coaching them into conversations that might look something like an interview. Working with them on their CV into representing themselves like they would probably want to represent themselves, but finding some mid-ground between how they want to represent themselves and what an employer might expect to see. Taking the terrifyingness out of interviews. Transition, right? We do a lot with transition because transition at school, primary school to secondary school to when it gets serious, and then into sixth form, and then after having 13, 14 years of structure and looking out there to this thing that is the big world out there, work or university, and not knowing what that structure is going to be like. Where's the scaffolding for young people going into that world? In the same way, exams. In the same way that exams are the ability to test the ability of you to take an exam. I think the interview process is kind of akin to that, and where it works really well, I think for young people that we work with, we encourage employers to give them trials. So they'll do a visit, orientate themselves to the space. They get to know the organisation and the people in there that they're going to have to deal with. And then they'll go for maybe a day and just get a feel for the place. If that goes well, they'll go for a work trial for a couple of weeks, where again the best employers will give them non-mission critical work, but that kind of echoes the kind of workflows perhaps that work that they would undertake. And again, they get to know that young person and their talents and their challenges and the adjustments that they will need to make to accommodate those talents. But it's again, and that quite often will lead to a job if you do it that way, because it removes the lack of understanding from the individual and the organisation they're going into. It does actually build relationships of empathy, however they're expressed. They're certainly felt, and and it builds confidence in that young person, so that they can be the best person they can be in that environment. But there's a reason there's ridiculously high unemployment rates for people with autism, and it starts with recruitment. So the adjustments need to start in your recruitment, your advertising, recruitment. You're thinking about how you're going to get this neurodiversity thing in your organisation. Starts before people get there.
I suppose when I was at school, I was failing all my exams because I wouldn't show my working out on math, and that really confused me because I didn't get it. Surely it's because the answer was right. Surely that'd be why. So that often confused me. And then I usually get my jobs because somebody knows me. Somebody's worked with me in the military, somebody's, you know, as being on the sort of cybersecurity circuit who knows me, and sort of likes me, and just says, you know, and it sort of works out that way. I'd say the majority of interviews I've been through, probably failed the majority of them, with caveats of people saying, well, we didn't think you were technical enough. I think there's a problem with how questions are presented at interviews, which are not good for neurodiverse people. Specifically because you're going to get an answer to that specific question, and the quality of that question is therefore important. I mean, if you want me to just read off something from CISP, then I can do that quite easily. But if you want me to answer a question which is specific to a technical description, then you're going to get not an answer out of the CISP sort of handbook. It's not going to be that case.